Alright guys, I am back and I've just added a few arrows and stuff to the render and I rendered it out and now we're in Photoshop, voice crack. And so now we're going to be adding some effects and stuff so it looks nice. First thing I like to do is I like to change the color to like a nice bluey purple thing just for the background because you know it's not black, it's just good color to kind of see everything. It's nice. And what the fuck is this? Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of this weird bit here. Right, so I fixed that. I actually have no idea what the hell happened there. So first things I like to do is I like to kind of fix stuff. So you'll notice there's this bit from the chest, jacket, whatever it is, covering up the face, and to that I just make a new layer. Kind of just select where the bits should be, so like around here to probably here, and then I just go up, get a brush, use the selection tool thing to eyedropper tool to get the color from there. I just paint that in, it's like that, and then you just want to do that for all the other bits that may have been screwed up. Okay, so I fixed that. I mean, it looks a little bit strange, and so merge those layers. It looks a little strange, but it'll look a lot better once we add the effects, which is what we're going to do now. So double click on this. This opens up the blending options, and first thing I like to do is I like to add a gradient overlay. I have the opacity set to 65. Make sure the blend mode is overlay. Make sure the gradient is this black and white one. Have the angle set to 90, scale to 100, and you can see that just adds a gradient so it looks better. Now I add a color overlay. I have the opacity at either 16 or lower. Don't go any higher than 16, and make sure the color is set to like the main theme color. So this one it's going to be blue, so just like select the blue from around up here, and I think this will look okay. And so yeah, it just adds like a blue tint. It looks pretty nice. Next thing I add is I add a Satan, and I have the opacity set to 5. Make sure the blend mode is multiply, and have the angle at 19, distance at 11, and size at 14. And that just kind of makes it a little bit darker in some areas. It looks pretty good. Finally, I do my inner glow, and I have the opacity set to overlay, opacity to 100. Sometimes I take it down a little bit if I think it's too much. I'll usually have it at like 100 or 80 for the first bit, and I'll have the size at 40 or 30. And yeah, and so once you've done that, you can save the style if you really want to use this for your other stuff, just by pressing new style and pressing OK. I already got it saved though, and now you've got this. Now you want to right click on that layer, go down to rasterize. Now this means you can add more effects. As you can kind of see, it fixed the mouth a little bit. There's still a little bit of white over here, but oh well. So double click onto the thing again, add another inner glow, except this time have it at maybe 30, set the choke to 10, take the opacity down a little bit, but first thing I like to do is I like to change the blend mode to color dodge and take it down a little bit so it's around maybe 40. That just adds another bit of glow. If you really want to, you can change it back to overlay. You can also do linear dodge. Linear dodge looks a bit strange though. Yeah, so just have it at overlay or linear dodge. It's really just whatever looks, no, not linear dodge, color dodge. I think I'm gonna go with a color dodge for this one. Then you want to, actually another thing you can do with this one is if you really want to, you can go in and change the color of it to like a blue. So you wanted it to have like a little blue tint kind of glow. That just, I don't know, you can play around with that if you want to. Let's rasterize that again. Now I liquify it. So I make a copy by doing Command or Control J, and I put that backup copy behind this layer here. Go into this one, go to filter, liquify, just play around with the size. It kind of depends on what you want, like the area you're liquifying, and I zoom in quite a bit so it's easier to see. You'll see me do that in speed arts and stuff. I think that'll be enough. 100, and set it to like a decent size, not too big so it's like this, so it like screws up the whole render. Just set it down a little bit, so yeah. And then once you've done that, you just want to go over the bits like the cuffs of the shirt, so like this. It kind of just makes it a bit more wavy. It looks pretty cool if you add some motion blues and stuff later on. And what the fuck was going on there? Yeah, so just play around with it, kind of drag these bits out here, and do the same for like most of the render, get onto the cape in a second. So yeah, just play around with it, drag some bits up. It's really whatever looks good. Like, there's no set way to liquify stuff. Sometimes I like to liquify the face a little bit, like just this bit down here, and that sometimes just to make it look a little bit rounder. Yeah, also liquify the text a little bit. I don't know, just makes it look interesting, and interesting is good. And yeah, just because sometimes stuff looks too straight, and it looks okay when things are straight, but sometimes it looks a little bit odd, and so I just want to liquify it, and it looks good. I'm just going to liquify the arrows a bit as well. Cool, so once you've done most of that, you can do the cape if you have a cape. Capes, they're not that hard to do. I zoom out a bit. Kind of just want to get the corners and just drag them up like so. Looks a bit strange, but we can kind of change it a bit later. And so yeah, you kind of just want to play around with it so it's like that. I don't know, this looks really bad, so I'm going to undo that and spend some time working on the cape, just dragging bits out. You'll notice there's like, it's kind of curved sometimes, so to fix that you just want to like drag in the bit at the top and it makes it straighter. That looks okay. It looks a little bit weird. We can just on this bit. However, if you get the polygon selection tool or the lasso tool, whatever you've got here, if you just hold on there, go to the magnetic lasso tool, it just kind of traces out around colors and stuff. You can use this for other things. It's pretty useful. And so yeah, if you just go around a little bit like that and go over it, and then just fill, like once you've done that, fill that bit in with black. You don't have to use like the thing, like you can still click to make the points. Yeah, so I selected that, and let's just get a brush. Could use the paint bucket tool, but I'm feeling lazy, so I'm not going to do that. And paint that in. There's a few bits that don't look that great. I guess we can fix them up just by, I don't know. Yeah, just fix them up. Right, so now it looks a little bit less screwed up. If the white is too much, or like if like a really strong reflection from the Lightroom, you can fix that by just selecting the bit where the cape is. So once you've done that, just Command or Control U on your keyboard and change the darkness down a little bit. So you can see it kinda makes a difference. Like, put it to 0, put it back to 71, minus 71, sorry. Yeah, it just makes it look a bit more slick. Right, so once we've done that, duplicate that layer again, go to filter, this time we're going to go to filter gallery, and what you can do is something pretty cool. So first thing I do is I go down to stylize and click on glowing edges. These are my settings, copy these down, edge width 4, edge brightness 5, and smoothness to 2. Second thing I do is I go to artistic and I go to plastic wrap, and these are my plastic wrap settings. Sometimes I change them if I want the plastic wrap to be a bit more, but I have the highlight strength set to 9, detail set to 8, and smoothness set to 5. And the next thing I do is I go to poster edges. There's also an artistic, and my settings are edge thickness set to 2, edge intensity set to 2, and posterization set to 6. You want to all do these effects at once, and to do that you just want to click on this thing here, and that allows you to create different effect layers. So don't worry if it's like another poster edges, you can still change that to something else. If you want to delete something, you just press the bin thing. Once you've done that, press OK, and it'll look weird. You'll be like, what the fuck did we do this for? Well, if you set it from if you change the blending mode to either color dodge, linear dodge is a bit much, I use it sometimes though, or overlay, set the opacity to around 40 to 25, around there. It looks kinda nice. However, there's some bits where it's like a bit strange, like on the face and stuff, and we're gonna fix those bits now. So click on that and go down to this thing here. This is a layer mask, and if we go to our brush tool, change the opacity down to 50 and have it set to black. Have it set to like a reasonable brush size, so maybe like 100, 200, and kind of just go in and tap away at the areas where it's too much, making sure the brush is set to black and you're on the layer mask thing. And you can see that it kind of just gets rid of some of the effect, makes it look better. So tap away at the bits where you think it is too much. Okay, so I've done that. It looks pretty good. If we just hide hide and show the layer, it looks pretty nice. You can really see the difference, and yeah, it just looks good. So once you've done that, you can right click on the layer mask and just go to apply layer mask, and then just merge these two layers together. Right, so now what we can do is we can add some glows to make it look nicer. So to that, we're going to make a new layer, go to our brush tool, change the size depending on, I don't know, the area we want to add a glow to. So say we want to add a glow to the text, which is what I usually do, and also sometimes to like some bits of the skin. I like to get a color from the thing, or like around about there, and just get a brush and go over it, and then change the opacity to linear dodge, color dodge, or screen. It really depends on what you're doing. Sometimes like a combination of different things looks good. You can also like play around with the opacity if it's a bit light or a bit dark. So as you can see, it kind of makes a little difference at color dodge, but maybe if I went to linear dodge, and I think I might bring the opacity down, so maybe around 40, that looks pretty good. And so yeah, let's just make some more glows on the different stuff. You want to keep making a new layer each time you make a new glow, because otherwise sometimes it looks a bit strange if you've got different blending modes, and I don't know, it's not always a good thing. So yeah, just kind of go over the text when you're adding a glow to it, like this, and just keep changing the brush size so that it fits. And I'm gonna put that at color dodge. Color dodge looks pretty good on this one, so let's keep it at color dodge and bring the opacity down a bit. We just like hide and then re-show it, you see it kind of makes a difference. So yeah, just keep adding different glows to different bits. As you can see down here, the E in games is a bit dark, and so we're going to make it a little bit lighter by making a new layer on top of this one and setting the color to white, and just go over it where the letter should be. And then once you've done that, change the blending mode to overlay. As you can see, it makes it lighter, and that's a good thing because now you can actually see it. And if we just make that a mask so that we don't get the extra retarded bit down there. And once you've done that, just merge the layers and your E should be brighter. By the way, if my voice sounds like a bit strange, it's because I'm recording this on a different day, because I had to go to bed on the other day that I was recording this, and so yeah, apologies if my voice sounds a bit retarded. I'm also feeling a little bit sick, so yeah, sorry for that. Right, so I've added some glows to the renders. It probably looks a bit different. Hopefully it looks better. I've missed out the sword and eyes because we're going to do something for those in just a second, but hopefully it looks good. What we're going to do now is just going to go down to the render and to the top of our glows and just Command G or Control G to group it, and we're just going to name this render. And now I'm going to make a new layer. We're going to go into kind of where the eyes are, so get your brush tool and scale it down again just a little bit until it's like about the size of the eye. Get a color similar to the eye, so around this color. Just go over it. If you want to, you can get rid of the bits that shouldn't be there just by getting the polygon polygon lasso tool, just deleting those by making a selection. Let's set this to linear dodge and bring it down to about 14, 30, I don't know, just play around with it. So as you can see, it makes a tiny difference. And now I'm going to add some glitter eyes. We've already got glitter eyes on here, but we can get some better ones, and so I'm just going to go do that real quick. Okay, so this is my unreleased pack. Here's a sneak peek of some stuff that's going to be in it. I'm just going to be using some of the pupil lights that I've got in here. Okay, so I believe this thing that I'm going to be using is from Xeris pack. I'll put it in my own pack if I'm allowed to. I'll just check up on that, but it's a very nice glitter eye, and we're just going to be using this one. So you kind of just want to shape it around a little bit, kinda, I don't know. If you really want to, you can get rid of the glitter eyes. So to do that, you just want to select around where it is, but like don't go over the hair, kind of make sure you get it like flush. And then once you've done that, get your brush, get a color from the eye, new layer, and just get the color from the eye that you had and go over it, and then get like a black from the top, go over that, and just do that, and it removes your glitter eye like so. And so that's how you get rid of them. Okay, so let's put the glitter eye back on and kind of just drag it around, play around with the size and stuff, and then duplicate it, make another one, and just put it in here. Doesn't really matter if it goes over the edge, however, if that's a problem for you, you can fix that pretty easily by doing the polygon lasso tool thing, cropping it out. I usually don't do that though, just because I think it looks nice when it kind of just goes over the eye. And so yeah, that looks really good so far. So once we've done that, we can just group this together, and I named this eyes because that's pretty much what it is, it's eyes. As you can see, there's a pretty big difference. It looks a lot better with the glitter eyes. So yeah, feel free to go browsing for glitter eye packs. I'll put some with links in the description below, so if you want to, you can get those ones. Right, next thing I like to do is I like to do the sword glow. And I do the sword glow separately because I like having the sword glow grouped together in case I want to grab it and use it for something else because I'm lazy and I can't be bothered remaking sword glows sometimes. So do a similar thing to the shirt, so get like a colour for the sword we're using. Just going to get the green bits and do that. We're going to set that to linear dodge, so it kind of makes it glow a bit more. You can use color dodge. I'm going to use linear dodge though and change the opacity around to 90. Actually no, I'm going to set it to 80. No, 70. Now we're going to make another layer. Bring the brush size up a little bit so it's kind of just covers the whole sword, and get the main color off here and kind of just bring it up a little bit, and then go over it and linear dodge or color dodge. Color dodge looks good sometimes. I think this time I'm going to be using color dodge and just bring it down to around 40 to 60. I'm going to keep mine down at around 45. And you'll notice there's like a bit of a weird thing going on down here. That's there's not much we can do about that except change the blending mode to something else, but I'm going to leave it at color dodge because I think it looks better when it's at color dodge. Right, so if you do want to add some sword lightning, you can use Shadow's tutorial, and I'll put that in the description for you guys to follow so that you can do that. Right, so instead of doing the sword lightning, I just added an effect which is in my pack. Yeah, I think it looks good. It's nice. It's like different lightnings that I've just put together and stuff. I think it looks okay. Right, so once we've got the sword glow done, group the sword thing together, and I'm gonna name this sword glow, and let's add a grunge overlay thing to the text. So to do that, you kind of just want to select around where the like colored bit of the text is using your own method of choice, and I'll be back once I've selected all the text. Right, so I attempted to select the stuff, the things, so you want to go down to the render layer and just duplicate that bit so that you got this. And I'm just going to drag this out of here. Right, and so once we've got our text up the top, I'm just going to go ahead and get a grunge overlay texture. You can get one of these pretty easily. Just look up grunge overlay texture thing on Google and you'll get one. Right, so I've got this grunge overlay thing. I got it from one of my packs. I have no idea what one it was, but you want to just make a clipping mask, so hold Alt on the keyboard and there'll be like a little gap thing here, and you'll notice it will make like a nice kind of overlay thing, and just set it to overlay, and that just kind of adds it gives it different effects and stuff, and you can move it around to play with the stuff if you want, and yeah, it just looks good. And then if you set the opacity down a little bit, if you really wanted to, you can play around with the opacity as well. Not the opacity. Play around with the opacity anyways, but you can invert it and stuff and play with things like that. And as you can see, it kind of adds like a nice specular effect type thing that looks pretty good. And you can just duplicate it and make more if you want to. And yeah, that just kind of gives it like a grainy kind of look. And if we take this and we go and drag this down and we put it top of this. See, it just adds, like, it just looks nice. So yeah, that's how you kind of add like a cool overlay effect thing to the text. Cool, so now our text looks a bit more dirty. I don't know, it looks nice. And so what we can do now is let's go ahead and add a background. Now there's a very good pack that's got like a ton of HD shaders, screenshots and stuff of SG maps, and so I'm going to be using that. I'll put the link to it in the description if I can find it so that you can get it as well. The pack also has some nice layer styles and some other stuff that's kind of cool, like vignettes and also textures and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty nice, and I'll link it in the description. So yeah, I just duplicated the pack to the thing, and we're just gonna go through and find a screenshot that kind of matches the render. Something I like to do when I've got the screenshot is I like to go Command or Control U, which brings up the hue and saturation thing, and I use the hue and saturation thingy-mabobby a lot, and basically what it allows you to do is play around with some of the stuff, and it looks good if you do it right. So what I like to do is I drag it down to about, I move the saturation down a little bit so it looks a little less saturated, so maybe 25 to around 80 down here, so minus 25. You can also bring the darkness down a little bit, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker, so maybe that, and it just makes it look better. Okay, so I'm just going to use this screenshot because it looks pretty nice. So once we've got our screenshot, now we can kind of group together the sword glow eyes and render. But before I do that, I just want to go in and make a few adjustments and add a few blues and stuff. So I'm just going to duplicate this and bring it underneath, and so I'm just going to use the one that's underneath, and we're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, do a Gaussian blur of around 10, put that over, and then once you've done that, you kind of just want to bring the opacity down to around 40 below. I think I'm going to keep mine at 20. As you can see, it makes a slight difference, like it just blurs things a little bit. If you want to remove the blur in some bits, just make a layer mask, set the brush to black, get a decent size, and opacity down to 50. Just paint away at the areas where you don't want it, so usually that's around the face and stuff. Right, so that looks pretty good. I'm happy with that. It's just a small blur, and we're gonna go ahead and apply that. So once we've done this, let's merge these together, and we're gonna add another blur, except this time we're gonna do a motion blur. So go to filter, blur, motion blur, keep the distance to around 100. I usually keep the max at like 120, and change the angle a little bit depending on your render. Once you've done that, press OK and bring it behind, and you see it kind of just makes a nice motion blur. Bring the opacity down to around 70 or 80, and once again just remove the bits where you kind of don't want it. My laptop just crashed in, so I had to redo some stuff. So yeah, that's why it looks a bit different, if it does look different. Now back to where we were. Now something I do before I merge the motion blur with the render is I make a new layer, another new layer, I make a clipping mask from that, and then I get my brush, have the color set to black. I just kind of shade where the light is, so it looks like we're going to be having the light come from sort of this way. I'm just going to kind of shade in the bits where it should be a bit darker, so like kind of just go around the edges of this side. It'll make a bit of a difference in just a second once I've finished playing around with it, and it just kind of makes it look a bit more shadowy, and it looks kind of cool. So you just want to do shadows where the shadows should be, and if you set this to around 60, 80 maybe, you want to shade it so that it looks like the shading should be there. It makes it a little bit darker, but I think if you do it well, you can see a difference that looks good. Okay, so I'm gonna set this to like a 20 because I don't want it too high. Merge these layers, and then we can merge these layers, but I want to do another thing before we do that, and that is just motion blur and Gaussian blur some bits. So kind of select just around where the bit you want to blur is, then Control or Command J, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and keep it at 10, and then bring the opacity down a little bit more, so like around 20, and just blues it a little bit more. It looks good. Alright, so once you've added some extra blues and stuff like that, if you really want to, you can do the same for the arrows. I'm not going to though this time. We can then merge these bits, but I'm just going to leave it there in case I want to come back and play with this a little bit more. Okay, so now let's add some lights. I've got some lights in my pack that I'm going to show off, so I'll just open up that and bring some of those in. Right, so once you've got your light in, you want to hold Alt and make a clipping mask, and then just drag it to kind of where you want the light source. And you can make it bigger if you want, and just drag it to like where you think the light source should be. That looks good. I'm gonna actually just bring it down a bit more, so it's down here, and then just bring the opacity down a little bit, so around maybe 28. 28 looks good for effects, but I usually do most of my particles and stuff at 28. Yeah, it looks pretty nice. And then so you just want to add some different colored lights in and stuff, like I've got this red one, so yeah, just add these different lights and stuff and keep doing that until you're happy and you don't want any more lights. You can also change the hue and saturation on these lights just by doing the same thing, so that and then dragging this thing across and it changes it. Right, so I've added a few lights and stuff, and so that's basically it for editing the renders and stuff. Now we can merge all these three things together, and I'm just going to call this thing. I don't know. Now we're going to go ahead and add the vignette from this thing. I know it's vignette, I don't know. Me plus French equals not good. Yeah, that just adds more depth and stuff. Now once we've done that, you can make it a bit darker if you want to by making your own. To do that, just make a new layer, get black, brush size around 200 to 400, just go over the edges, opacity down to around 70, bring it out a bit. Boom, vignette. I think I like the press one a bit more just because it's cleaner. Yeah, and so once you've done that, let's add the number in the corner real quick. So to that, let's just go to the text, just hashtag, you can do 999, and this font doesn't have numbers, what? So I usually use inversions, and I'll have this at like 200. Actually no, I'll probably have this at 170. So yeah, inversions is a good font if you want to use it. There's also other fonts and stuff you can use. This tutorial I'm just going to be sticking with inversions, and you can either have this set to black or white. I usually have it set to white, and it's a bit hard to see at the moment, but oh well. Let's just bring this up over the vignette. Let's add a thingy to it, a warp. So there's two warps I mainly use. I use the bend one, and I have it set to around -3, and that just kind of brings it in a bit more. If you really want to play around with it, you can like really bring it in like that, or I have it set to flag. I think I'm going to have it at flag today just because I'm feeling a bit different, and I'm just going to have it at 10. Let's bring it down a little bit, and that looks pretty good. If you really want to, you can add a layer style to it. Now let's add some more stuff to the background. Let's just add a shadow behind it, so let's click on the screenshot, get a brush, have the brush set to around a decent size, and just kind of brush away at underneath the like whole render thing. And then if we set this down to like a 90 or maybe even 75, that just kind of adds like a shadow to it, and it looks pretty good. So you can just keep lowering up the shadows if you want to. I think I'm just going to keep it at this because that looks good. Merge these, and this adds a shadow underneath it. Looks nice. And I'm just going to add one more grunge overlay to the whole thing so that it just looks a bit more dirty and stuff. Right, so I've got the overlay, and I'm just going to bring the opacity down to 28, which is what I use for stuff like that, and it just looks kind of nice. Adds a bit more graininess and stuff to it. And so yeah, right, now we can get onto my favorite part, which is color correction. So I'm just going to group everything we have so far, and then I'm going to start adding color corrections. Now, first thing I like to do is I add a gradient map and set it to the normal thing, And honestly, if you want like a black and white thing, there's like a really black and white kind of filter is the easiest way to do it. I think I'm gonna keep it at around, because some stuff looks good when it's like this. So I'm gonna keep it at 50. Actually, I'm gonna bring it down to 40 just for this. And now I'm gonna add a color lookup. This is just some like preset filters and stuff, so you can just really play around with these and bring the opacity down. And so you just want to keep layering them up. Like I usually add a gradient map and then a color lookup, bring the opacity down. You just want to keep playing with it because different stuff looks good. And then I'll usually add a photo filter. I'll add some cooling filters in the photo filter thing, lots of different ones to choose from. Bring the opacity down on that. Then I add a curves. To do the curves, you just bring it up and then bring this bit down a little bit. Bring the opacity right down to around 20. You want to keep the opacity for things kind of low when you're doing this, but you also kind of want to keep it a little bit higher so that you actually notice some stuff. It's like you can't really notice any changes, so I'm just going to redo that. Right, and the next thing you can add is a levels, and levels is pretty much the same as curves, except, I don't know, it's just a little bit easier to use sometimes. Yeah, just drag that across, bring the opacity down. Another thing you can add or use when making color corrections is gradients, and gradients, they look good sometimes if you do them correctly, and so usually just set this to like the main theme color, but keep it kind of darkish. I'm gonna set it to around this, and you can play around with the style and stuff. This thing, if you want to do like a reverse diamond, I don't know. I'm just gonna keep it at linear and bring the opacity down, right down to like 8 or 9. If you keep it at like 8 or 9, you can just barely see a difference, and it looks good sometimes. And that's pretty much it for color corrections. Like you just want to keep layering up stuff like that until you're happy with it. Keep adding different photo filters and color lookups and curves and stuff. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to spend like probably a decent 5 minutes doing that. So yeah, I'll be back once I've color corrected everything. One thing I forgot to mention is you can also play around with the blending modes and stuff on these. So say you wanted to have this set to overlay and then just bring it down a bit, and that kind of just makes it darker. Overlay makes stuff darker, and linear dodge and color dodge and everything in this section makes stuff brighter. I think it actually looks kind of cool if I have it like this. Now, once you've added a few CCs, you might want to go back and just change a few things down here. So I'm just going to bring the opacity down on the grunge overlay just a little bit, so it's a little bit less noticeable. And yeah, just continue to stack the stuff up. Okay, so once you're happy with all your color corrections, I like to add one final curves or levels depending on what I feel like. And sometimes you'll notice the difference, sometimes you won't, but I just do that. And then select all your color correction things and group them up, and then you can disable and re-enable the thing, and you'll really notice a difference. Like we just keep turning it on and off. Like it looks good. And you might want to go in and change the opacity of the folder that we're in, so maybe bring it down to around 80, and yeah, it just looks good. And so that's pretty much how I do my thumbnails. One last thing I'd like to add is I go ahead and I add a kind of soft light thing around, a soft light stroke, I don't know what to call it, but I make a new layer, select the whole thing, right click and go to stroke, and then I have the width of this to like 5, sometimes 10, and then change this to white, have this set to inside, and then once you've got that, just change the blending mode to soft light, and it just kind of adds like a clean border thing around it. And then you can bring the opacity down if you really want to. I think I'm going to keep it at 28 because that looks good. And yeah, that's pretty much how I do my thumbnails. Like, there's really nothing else I need to say. And so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this combination of like a thumbnail tutorial and how I do Photoshop stuff. I don't know, I know this is really long, and thank you for bearing with me in my constant struggles that I had throughout recording this. And so yeah, I guess I'll do another tutorial at maybe, let's do something high, let's do 20 likes so I don't have to do one for a while. So yeah, I hope you guys like this, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.